So I first want to thank everyone for coming out to the public meeting for the DC Cooperative Weed Management Area. Again, I'm Laura Washington, the coordinator for the DC Cooperative Weed Management Area. And I just want to give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about with you guys today. We will have Damian Ossie, wildlife biologist at DDOE, giving a kind of overview of what a what the DC-CWMA is, what CWMAs are, and kind of a historical background of how the cooperative got started. We'll have Jorge giving some insight on invasives in the district and some of the work that's going on and how some of our programs relate to combating the issue of invasives in the district. We'll have Ted talk about some of the benefits of being a DC-CWMA partner or member, which include several different areas of opportunity for different groups to take advantage of our resources and our steering committee, which if people from the steering committee could just stand up one more time. I'm not sure if everyone knows who all are steering committee members. And of course these three. So we have steering committee members ranging from local government, state government, Anacostia Watershed Society. We're actively recruiting other members to the cooperative, different organizations that have a vested interest in invasive plant management. Finally, I will close with some upcoming events and opportunities, as well as some of our current accomplishments, and we'll have a question and answer session. So we're going to start off with Damian.
All right. Thank you. As Laura said, my name is Damian Ossie, and I work for the DC Department of the Environment. I do lots of different things, but this is one of the main ones, is invasive plant management. I also go out and count critters, and I do backyard wildlife habitat workshops in the district. So I'm going to tell you about what a cooperative weed management area is and the benefits of cooperative weed management, and then a little bit about the history of how we've come together as a group. The definition of a cooperative weed management area is, I found this online somewhere, and it's pretty good, but it's a partnership of invasive plant management stakeholders committed to collaboratively managing invasive plants in a defined area. So the important parts of that are a partnership and collaboratively and defined area. So those are the three things I'm gonna talk about today. Typically, the partners in a cooperative weed management area are the landowners, and usually when you're talking about natural areas, you're talking about federal or state or local government landowners, because it's usually a park or something like that. And then other landowners, these were formed out west usually, and there's large private landowners out west. So a lot of times, originally, the cooperative weed management areas had private landowners. And then nowadays there's also foundations and conservancies and other groups that are trying to maintain areas in a natural state or increase biodiversity in their land. Then you also have other interested groups like conservation organizations like AWS and SCA, and community organizations, which is one of the things we're really trying to recruit here in the district, is community-based organizations. And then also university groups and researchers and private individuals. So usually the partners and the people who sign on to the actual memorandum of understanding that forms a cooperative weed management area are the major stakeholders, but it's always good to have as many partners as possible. Like I said, the model for these comes from out west, where there's large tracts of land, and there's usually they're called cooperative weed management areas because we've gotten away from saying weeds when we refer to invasive plants or non-native invasive plants. But out west, there's also a legal definition of a federal noxious weed. And in the West, a lot of these invasive plants are also federally listed noxious weeds because they impact rangeland, they impact cattle, and things like that. So we still call them cooperative weed management areas, even though a lot of people in the invasive plant management realm are moving away from the word weed. There's a lot of good native plants that are something weed because Europeans thought they were weeds when they named them. There's other names for these. There's CSMAs, which are cooperative invasive species management areas. There's PRISMs, which are partnerships for regional invasive species management. And then there's a couple other names, but they don't have good acronyms. How they work, so some of the characteristics of a cooperative weed management area are they operate within a defined geographic area. So that's one of the main things, is that you pick an area that you're going to work in, and that's going to be where everyone's working collaboratively. And that can be defined by a common geography, like a watershed, or a common weed problem. There are cooperative weed management areas that are formed to target specifically one invasive plant, or a political boundary or another administrative boundary, like the district, or maybe like a system of parks, like Adirondack Park has a cooperative weed management area up in New York, even though it's not one. It's one big park, but there's also inholdings and different parcels inside, so it's a mixture of landowners. But so here in the district, we decided on our boundary would be the District of Columbia, the boundaries of the district. We've also talked about expanding it to Arlington County and Alexandria, kind of a gimmick on the original federal city, but that hasn't really gone anywhere. Another important aspect is they involve a broad cross-section of partners. So all the different partners I talked about before, ranging in size from federal down to local, and from local nonprofits to national nonprofit groups, all across the board, you want a broad cross-section so you're reaching as much of the community as possible. One of the main things and most important things about a cooperative weed management area is they're formed to facilitate cooperation and coordination across jurisdictional boundaries, because the plants don't care that the land ownership changed at this line. The plants are going to follow their biology and their ecology in the soil and climate and things like that, and they're going to move where they want to move. So when you're on the ground managing invasive plants, you don't want to have to stop at that boundary. You want to have that border be the landowner on that border be a partner, so that you can cross into their land and continue doing your work managing the invasives. A few other things, they involve a long-term commitment to cooperation. So usually it's a 5 or 10 year memorandum of understanding that forms them. And then we try to operate under a comprehensive plan. So right now the steering committee is working on a strategic plan and an operating plan for the coming years. And then usually they're governed by a steering committee, or if they end up becoming a 501c3, then they'll have a board that manages them. The goals of a cooperative weed management area can vary. So you can have some that are just targeting what's called EDRR, early detection and rapid response, and those are groups that are looking for new invasive plants in an area and trying to eradicate them. There's also some that are really based on raising awareness and doing outreach in the area, or things like inventory and mapping. Usually they involve all of these things, and typically they also involve, most importantly, weed management. And your process and your tactics for managing weeds are going to vary on the size of the cooperative weed management area and the partners, but that's always one of the goals of the cooperative weed management area. Here in the district, we're really, one of the things that we haven't talked about much, but something that we really need to target is this early detection rapid response, because there are new invasive plants. There are new plants being brought by the horticultural industry all the time, and there are new plants that are being found that are naturalizing, and it's very easy for plants that are naturalizing to make the jump to being invasive. And there's a few here on the map that I put together that are relatively new. This one's called Italian arum, and this one is called five-leaf aurelia, and they're relatively new. You don't see them many places, but where they're naturalizing, they're definitely acting invasive. So that's one of the things that we're going to focus on. And we're trying to form this cooperative weed management area, and one of the things that I researched when we were starting it up is how do these groups function well? So how they function, but how do they function well? And so one of the first things that comes up on the list is a public meeting. So we're having a public meeting, trying to attract new partners, trying to attract a variety of partners, and then multiple and high visibility outreach events and volunteer projects. And then a lot of them end up doing collaborative research. So that's always a good thing when you have, especially when you have partnerships like with the National Park Service, the Regional Exotic Plant Management Team, which functions out of, there's an office over by Georgetown Reservoir, but they function regionally. They work from Catoctin Park all the way down to Assateague. They go all over the place. They're kind of a strike team type model for invasive plant management. But they also do a lot of research. They do a lot of data collection and inventory and mapping. So they have those resources that other partners can learn from. It's not, we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we.
What was that group again?
It's called the Exotic Plant Management Team. And they're
for Urban Ecology.
Yeah, they're in the National Park Service. It's the regional office of the National Park Service. So those are kind of really quickly, those are some of the things about a cooperative weed management area. Did I cover everything I said I was going to cover? Yeah. So, and then I wanted to talk about why we need one here in this region. And if you think about the district, it's an urban area. The Capital Region has industrial, urban, suburban, rural, and even international pressures. And there's many modes of introduction and transport of plant material in the district. Not so much as like in a port city like Baltimore, but we still have a lot of influence from the horticultural industry. And the main thing is that we have a history of a lot of these really invasive plants being here for a long time. Another impact is the natural areas that are in the district. We have a lot. We have tons. I mean, Rock Creek Park is 4 square miles. It's humongous. But they're fragmented, and most urban areas, they're going to be fragmented. They're also overused because it's urban. There's lots of people out there using them, and they're overbrowsed by deer and by geese and by invasive earthworms and things like that. And there are some. Yeah, and they're also historically undermanaged, and part of that is a lack of funding. A lot of that is just a lack of knowledge over the past century or so about the impact of invasive plants, and especially the district government hasn't really had this on its radar until now. So this is one thing that we're really trying to ramp up in the district government. And then a lot of urban natural areas, especially down near the rivers, are reclaimed soils, and they're very compacted. They're usually very polluted. And when you have reclaimed soils on a piece of land, that usually creates the situation where invasive plants are going to thrive better than native plant communities. So why do we form a cooperative weed management area? Because it does all these things. We increase the success of the management and restoration in these natural areas. And I'm just going to say it again, we do that by facilitating cooperation among landowners. We allow sharing of resources. We allow management across jurisdictional boundaries. We increase communication and public awareness. And then, most importantly, we open the door to funding opportunities, which is something that invasive plant managers know that you need to do it. And a lot of federal money is now tied to these partnerships. Federal money for invasive plant management is tied to partnerships like this. So you have to be in one of these in order to get that federal funding. And do I have time? I think I have a little bit of time. So just briefly how we started forming the cooperative weed management area. About 4 years ago, we started sitting down with some National Park Service partners and the Nature Conservancy and Anacostia Watershed Society, and just talking about forming one of these. And really, initially what we did was do a couple of pilot projects. So I worked with Mary Travellini and some of her coworkers on the C&O Canal in the district. C&O Canal Park is 170 miles long, so it's a very long, large park. 184 and a half. Sorry, Michelle. I was close, right? And we only have 3 miles here in the district, but it's one of the parks in the district that has a lot of invasive plants, that has a lot of pressures. There's a big watershed upstream that's always dumping invasive plants down into the park, so we decided we would work on plants there. And what we did was manage one of the most high-profile plants along Canal Road in the district is the Tree of Heaven. And here's a picture of it here. So we actually used integrated pest management methodology where we used herbicides coupled with mechanical methods to control those plants. It's called hack and squirt, where you just hack a notch into the tree and you squirt a concentrated herbicide into the notch. And that kills the tree. We were very successful. It took 2 years, but we were very successful at that. And if you drive up Canal Road, you'll see a lot of dead, standing Tree of Heaven. We did that for 2 years, and then we also, in 2009 and 2010, we had the DC Summer Youth Employment Program, and I kind of managed a couple of crews on some land in the district, and Jorge managed a crew, I think for 2 summers, at Fort DuPont Park, which is National Park Service. And then just in late 2010, we really got going. We had a grant opportunity from the U.S. Forest Service, the Urban and Community Forestry Office. And so we applied for a grant. It was really the SCA and Anacostia Watershed Society who got together to apply for a grant, which funded the coordinator, and it's going to fund a summer crew of high school students this year, and then next year it'll be a natural resource, natural plant vegetation, I can't remember, revegetation crew, which is adult age crew, and I think that'll be a 3-month crew. So we're going to have a lot of work done this summer and next summer, and hopefully beyond. We're also working on applying for grants from the Pulling Together Initiative, which is National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So I had a list of grant resources, but we can talk about those later. So that's it for me. That's how we form the Cooperative Weed Management Area, and hopefully you'll be interested in joining and helping us with the subcommittee or joining the steering committee.
Excellent.
My name is Jorge Lantus. I'm the staff conservation biologist with the Anacostia Watershed Society. I actually do more restoration work than conservation biology, but I'll always try to give the conservation biology approach because we had some interesting biodiversity here in DC. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the areas where we're going to be working. So can you all see the map? So right here. So the blue areas are the federal lands owned by the National Park Service mostly. And that's the high quality, high conservation value habitats in the district. We have a figure of what's the whole area of parkland, both federal and non-federal.
I think it's about 19,000 acres.
19,000 acres. So, and then the second most important landowner is the government of the district, the green areas right here. And some are kind of jointly owned or operated, like the Suitland Parkway and also the Kingman Island as well. And you know, you can see in the map that the forest fragments, let's take a look at Rock Creek Park, are pretty narrow and pretty irregular in shape. So that means that there's a lot of edge, and that creates perfect conditions for invasive plant species to colonize and take cover. And that's why we have more than 20 species of highly invasive plants in the district. Tree of Heaven, Phragmites, English ivy are some, Japanese knotweed are some of the most remarkable ones in terms of their invasiveness. AWS is one of the founding organizations of the CWMA. We started in 2007 with Damien and CSA and other folks. We have been working, AWS has been working in a number of parks, including Fort DuPont Park, the second largest woodland in DC, very nice. Has a nice population of wild turkeys right there in the middle of the city. And then there's, we also work on the Maryland side, and Bellsville and other Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission parks, long name there. And we have been in the business for 5 years, removing invasives, and it is really a long-term endeavor, so that's why it's really important to have a coordinated entity like the CWMA and work in partnership, because working isolated really leaves a lot of loopholes there, and this is, I think this is going to be a great effort here in DC, especially if we can get also some other partners from Arlington, Virginia, and the Maryland side as well. What else?
Can I ask a map question? So private's also blue. So
Yeah.
I can't really tell how much private land.
Yeah, there's
I
kind
think
of.
I've actually left that off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
because
why I can't
really
see.
most of the blue is public. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be up.
Is there much private that's?
Well, there's really not a whole lot, but I think I can't remember when my coworker made that layer, that map layer, and I can't remember what he defined private as.
Maybe it's just meant to be the gray?
No,
No?
it's not. It might have been things like universities and things like that. Like Catholic University has about 40 acres of forested land. And
Rockefeller acres.
yeah, things like that, like Rockefeller. Yeah.
And we are at a stage where we can tackle incipient infestations of some species like, and some folks, like for example, Anna does a really great work at Rock Creek Park with early detection, rapid response. That's the best way to manage these species. Once they, take over, all we're doing is kind of keeping their populations in check. Eradication is really impossible. And that's a good example with Phragmites. Here's a map of Phragmites in the Anacostia River. This is Kingman and Heritage Islands. So all the tiny red patches are populations of Phragmites. That's about like 3 acres or so in total. So it's still a good time to get it, because I don't know if you have been up north in 95, north of Baltimore and New Jersey in the New York area. There's areas of like 30 acres of just Phragmites, so we don't want that, especially in the Anacostia River, where we have been revegetating with native wetland plants for about 10 years or more. And there's a lot of great areas of mudflats and a lot of importance from birds. Dan Roach, the bird expert here, so it's really high quality habitat for wildlife.
What's the origin of the majority of the invasive plants? Is it man-caused or?
Yeah, mostly the horticultural industry. Yeah. What else? So we're going to have a weed warriors program. So we're kind of transferring the weed warriors program from Montgomery County, the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, with some elements of other programs going on at the National Park Service.
Rock Creek.
Rock Creek Park. Is that the Rock Creek Conservancy?
No, Rock Creek Park.
Rock Creek Park, okay. So we're gonna adapt it and kind of tailor it to the DC area. So we're gonna have training programs, including online sessions, classroom, and outdoor sessions. The participants, we're gonna have an ID so that the park rangers and public officials know who they are, and they are, they know what they're doing. So we're gonna start this in July. Okay, so, and also we almost have our website, so, and that's, do we know the domain now, the URL?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We'll be launching the
But,
website in
yeah.
the next 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
I'll be
so
getting that information to everyone.
We'll have
by
all that
email.
information available at the website.
Trainings.
Yeah, the trainings. So we're gonna, as part of the grant we got from the U.S. Forest Service that Damien mentioned, we're gonna be training summer crews, youth, interns, SEA crews, and volunteers in general. So also other people are free to join those, and we're gonna be posting them. And we're gonna teach basic invasive plant removal techniques, mostly hand removal, mechanical removal techniques, a little bit of chemical control, perhaps. So, yeah, that's my part. Anything else?
The NPS training that we just had.
Oh yeah, we had a very successful training session at the Rock Creek Park. We had people from SEA, from Arlington County, Fairfax County, and other jurisdictions in the area. There's a picture here. We were showing basic invasive plant removal techniques. We also had the participation of Jill Swearingen from the National Park Service. She has published a number of nice publications. Actually, we have the local guide to the invasive plants of the Mid-Atlantic region. Jill is the author with other colleagues there. So, yeah.
There was a DC book about this big.
Oh, yeah, actually.
Last year. Who did that?
Yeah, Mary Farah. Yeah. Yeah,
That's very helpful.
that's a UDC. Mary, you have
UDC,
free
oh, yeah.
copies, right?
Oh, yeah, there's copies I brought.
Yeah, that's a great publication. Yeah. And that's all. Any other questions?
Jorge, I have a question. I'm new to all this. Are friends sharing information? If we do an inventory on property that we're stored, should we get that to you so you can see the patterns of invasive?
Are you asking if we have like a list of the species and maps?
No, should we share our information through you with other people?
Absolutely, yeah, that would be a great thing. And also, we're using this platform, this website, the EDRR, is that EdMaps, yeah. That was created by the University of Georgia and other partners like the National Park Service. It's a web-based mapping system where you can, sign up, get an account, and you can report any infestation, any major infestation that is, relevant where you're working and doing actual restoration work, so that everybody else knows what you're doing. So that would be, I would recommend that. But we also have a listserv where we can, share more information with the partners.
Exactly, and also we look forward to learning about, we want to use the cooperative as an opportunity to share that information with natural resource managers and other people that might be interested. So my contact information is on the brochure. We definitely appreciate getting that information, because with our crews, our summer crews, and some of the volunteer groups that we plan to have targeting different sites, maybe we can come and target some sites that you know about that we're not aware of. So definitely, everyone, please keep us abreast of infestations that you know of.
Just to follow up on that, does Jill, she mentioned Maiden, Maryland, what is that? Network?
That's the
Early
Mid-Atlantic
Detection.
Early Detection Network.
So are you doing that and the Bugwood, or the?
Well, they're tied to each other. So
Okay,
they're
that's the one you do in your
Yeah.
doing your PDA or something.
yeah. One is the MAEDN is on a smartphone
Yeah, actually,
or something.
we should go directly to that one, because that's the, for the Mid-Atlantic region. So
And we have some program brochures for the Mid-Atlantic EDN
yeah.
on the table as well.
Great. Thanks, Jorge. Hi, everybody. Once again, my name is Ted Miller. I'm from the SCA, or Student Conservation Association. I won't spend this time going into the history of SCA, but I will say we're celebrating 55 years on June 27th of doing work on federal lands, public lands, and community property as well. So we're all pretty happy about that. So yay, SCA. So our role in the CWMA, it's pretty multifaceted. I will say, I don't know if it's been mentioned yet, that the grant we received from the Forest Service is to work on non-federal lands. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to be talking to our federal partners. As Damien said, plants cross boundaries, so we have to work with everybody. The grant is a 3-year grant, and we're now in the first year of it. And the role with SCA in the first year is to provide DDOE and the CWMA with an intern, and that is Laura. And she's now been in the position for
6 months.
6 months. Has 6 more to go. And has been doing some great work. Another part of year one, this summer, we will have a high school conservation crew made up of high school age students, 15 to 18 years old, from DC, Virginia, and Maryland, working for a 5-week period from June through August. They work 5 days a week. They get paid hourly minimum wage. We have 2 crew leaders that go out with them every day. And this summer, we're probably going to be focusing on Heritage Island and hopefully Suitland Parkway. So that'll be kind of the first year. The second year of the grant, we're going to have another intern come in to continue Laura's work, which has mainly been establishing the CWMA. And then we'll have a 9-month intern come in next year that will work with DDOE again and do similar things, but really just carry through what Laura has already established. And then next summer, instead of a high school crew, we'll have a young adult crew. And these will be folks that are ages 18 to 25, maybe a little bit older, either in college or out of school. And there will be anywhere from 4 to 6 of them and 1 project leader. And if we didn't finish the work on Heritage or Suitland Parkway, we'll go back there. If not, we'll find another area to work in. So really a group of interns with a project leader. Third year, we're going to have, I don't know if we have another intern, I don't think we do, but we'll also have another core team, another young adult team working on invasives. So we have most of the funding. As Damien said, we got a grant through the Forest Service, but we still need to have matching funds as well. And those are coming through. And as those come through, we can decide, okay, we can implement this next part, and so on and so forth. So it's not completely all 100% set up yet. So our summer crew this summer, it's a good way for high school age students to be engaged in conservation work. AWS will come out and do a training with all of them, so they'll learn all the plant ID, and then be able to go out and actually provide, the hands-on, the work component to it. We provide them with workforce development skills, not just in green jobs, but just getting up in the morning and getting to work and being responsible to a group of your peers, which I think we all know high school age students need a little bit of these days. So that's part of what we do. Another benefit of being a partner is that we can all get together for large service projects, whether it's MLK Day or Earth Day, and all come together and get as many volunteers out there as we can, and do really good work. We also have a large tool cache that we can provide tools for their service projects. We can't lend out tools to other groups, but we can come out on a big service day and provide tools. The benefits that we've seen so far, for being a partner with the CWMA is, volunteers for your site. So if you have a project and you need volunteers, we have 4 or 5 different organizations that can gather volunteers, and we can get hundreds out for, a day of service just doing invasive work. Training for those volunteers. AWS does a great job of that. SCA can provide the kind of how to use the tools and how to manage a group of volunteers. We can do that. Exposure to local communities about invasives. We're getting high school kids out there from the DC area that are from those communities that we're working in. So they can go back to their communities and tell their parents and other community officials and members that this is really important work that needs to be done. The workforce development, which I already mentioned, SCA is providing a lot of that. We have entire curriculums designed around introducing, students to the workforce with a green kind of twist on that. Management plans can be developed for those selected sites, and that's something that we can all do, that we're all in need of. And one of the reasons that we came to be a partner with the CWMA was mainly because we saw a need for coordination. We could go out one summer and cut down as much bush honeysuckle as we wanted to on Heritage Island, but we don't have the ability to go out and spray afterwards. So we come back next summer, and although great job security for us, there's the bush honeysuckle again. So that's just one type of coordination that's needed. The grant writing is always a big one. The more people we have involved in the grant process and the more people that we can put on there as partners, the better off we're going to be, because it all looks like we're working together. Environmental education, AWS does environmental education and outreach. SCA does that as well in DC, Virginia, and Maryland, going into schools, talking anywhere from K to 12 schools, talking about invasives and just general environmental education. The last one I kind of already mentioned, but just partnering and outreach on big, large service projects. Laura will probably talk a little bit more about on that.
Yep, so again, I'm Laura Washington. I coordinate the activities of the CWMA. And I was just going to run down the different committees that we have so people can know different ways that they might be involved through the different committees. We have a strategic planning committee, which deals with things like planning large events and volunteer days, trying to keep us aware of events that are coming up so we can participate and educate people. Also have a policy committee, which Jorge and Damien are on. As Jorge said, the AWS played a large part in developing some invasive policy, invasive policy for Montgomery County, Maryland?
The state of Maryland.
For the state of Maryland, I'm sorry. And I believe DDOE and Damien are working on helping develop that for the district. So those are some activities of the policy committee. The education and outreach committee are major and very important parts of the DC-CWMA. One of our charges is to educate and engage people. We'll be doing that through the Weed Warriors program, as Jorge mentioned, which will be opening up to pretty much anyone who's interested in doing this type of work throughout the city, throughout the district. We are currently recruiting and doing direct outreach to civic associations, friends of groups, and pretty much anyone else, other environmental organizations and groups that have some type of, that are already a bit organized, and, as well as people who are not. We again, want to educate people and get the word out. We have a greenhouse/native plant nursery committee. That's an issue that several of our steering committees mentioned as an area in need of help. A lot of the activities that are happening in terms of invasive removal, those areas also need to be replanted. And so with our native plant nursery initiative, we hope to establish several areas in which different types of plants can be grown to restore some of the areas that we're clearing. Kingman Island being one of those examples. We've been doing a lot of work at Kingman Island. We have a technology committee, which is headed by Jill Swearingen, who coordinates invasive plant management at the Center for Urban Ecology. And that committee is more focused on staying abreast of the latest technologies, such as EdMaps and some of the other monitoring and other technologies. Finally, we have the early detection and rapid response committee, which is aimed at just that, keeping our partners aware and keeping others aware of the emerging invasives and trying to tackle them and get under control of them before they become more invasive than they already are. Some of the upcoming activities, as mentioned, are Weed Warriors. We plan to launch in July. We'll be having the online tests and training on our website, so people can check our website out, which we'll be launching also in mid-June. We'll be initially on the DDOE website, so everyone who's signed our sign-in list, I'll be emailing you when we do have our website, so you can check out our new website. We will have some upcoming volunteer days. Most of them will be at Kingman Island. That's one of our main sites. We are going to be working with the DDOE Summer Green Jobs Education Program, and other green jobs programs, trying to educate and provide that workforce development for different programs. We just had a training that Jorge mentioned at the Rock Creek Park, and we're doing another one at Catoctin Park, which is, again, open to people that are really doing this on the ground right now. We like to provide that additional training to natural resource managers and others that may not be doing it now but will be doing it in the future and have a vested interest in that. The most exciting event that I am happy to talk about today is DC Invasives Day. We decided to do this to educate and engage people across the district to the work that needs to be done, and as well as connect people with the different groups that are doing this work. So the idea was piggybacked off of Virginia Invasives Day, which has been, I think, going on for several years now, and has been extremely successful. Obviously, DC is a bit smaller, but we still want to have as much participation as possible. We'd like our partners as well as others to lead groups at different sites, people that have a site they're managing, a national park or a site near them, or have relationships with someone that manages the site, can lead or also participate in DC Invasives Day. We currently have several partners on board. Most of our steering committee will be leading. We are working with Dumbarton Oaks Conservancy. We're working with the GW Center for Civic Engagement and Governance, Groundworks Anacostia, and several other different partners. So we're looking to actively recruit people to lead and recruit people to work on that day. That is September 8th. And we are going to have a database to collect all the information on the weeds, the amount of invasives that were removed, what groups did it, and I hope to, again, just use that day as a way to educate people and get them engaged and hopefully move forward with continuing to do that work. I mentioned the invasives trainings. Talk about some of the work that we've accomplished thus far. Again, those invasives trainings, through the National Park Service and some other trainings that we've done with Washington Parks and People, we've trained over 100 people, and specifically with the National Park Service training. It was a very comprehensive training, including tool safety, chemical use, reading chemical sheets. The exotic plant management team walked through their processes and what they do as as a unit, and that's something we're really proud of as the people that we've been able to train thus far, and providing that resource to our partners, because although the National Park Service was a partner and helped train, we also had several Park Service employees take that training that were not, before that time, did not have that education and that background. We have done outreach at several different events, including Earth Day. We were at World Environment Day this week. We were at Kingman Island Festival, in which we reached several hundred people, and we look to table at different events and get the word out and get people more engaged through that way as well. And we've also been looking to develop new partnerships. Recently, we developed a partnership with the Friends of Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens. They'll be our first weed warriors at Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens, and the site manager there, Doug Rowley, is really excited for the National Capital Parks East to have their first Weed Warriors program. Currently, Rock Creek has a wonderful Weed Warriors program who I'm learning from in development of ours, but we're trying to get some Weed Warriors east of the river. So we're working with some of the parks and some of the areas and natural areas east of the river to try to train up people and get people to develop some ownership and stewardship of some of the areas that are east of the river. Specifically, non-federal, that's one of our charges through one of our grants, but we are also wanting to engage our partners, which are federal, in different ways as well. So we'll be having a crew at Rock Creek Park for DC Invasive Day, working with the Dunbarton Oaks Conservancy, and again, looking to get different groups at different sites all across the city. And I have a sign-up sheet for people that I hope people will be signing up to participate in our lead groups for DC Invasive Day. And I think that's pretty much it. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh yeah, I'm hoping that folks will have quite a few questions.
Well, real quick, I just wanted to say, I don't think we actually said everyone who's been on the steering committee or all the partners. So I just wanted to go through it. It's a DC Department of the Environment, DC Department of Transportation, Urban Forestry Administration. There's a representative from the Exotic Plant Management Team, which is a Center for Urban Ecology. That's a regional office of the National Park Service. Then there's also people from National Capital Parks East, Rock Creek Park, GW Parkway, and what's the other one? C&O Canal Park. And we don't have anyone from the Malls and Memorials Park because there's really not much natural area. They don't actually have many invasive plants.
There's dandelion.
There's dandelion. And then also Student Conservation Association and the Anacostia Watershed Society and UDC Center Cooperative Extension Service. And I think that's it. So most of those partners have representatives here. So in the past, we also work with the Nature Conservancy, Mary Travellini, and we've also Audra from the ICPRB, Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin, has come to a couple of meetings. And we've also had some, I think, partners from the Navy have come to a couple of meetings as well. So we're trying to expand the cooperative and increase our membership. So hopefully, if you're interested, you can join us, and especially subcommittees. We need help on some of the
Native Plant
subcommittees.
Associations in the area.
Yeah, and we work with them a little bit. Maryland Native Plant Society has a DC chapter.
They did,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
She was here last time.
Yeah.
I want to have a question in terms of, okay, what's the vision? And I'm really glad to hear that this is a kind of a new effort to kind of maybe the biggest effort in a long time to reinvigorate this whole process. You got a lot of folks here seem like they're kind of knowledgeable. I'm not so knowledgeable, and maybe some of the folks, the 20 to 100 people that will look at the video, may not be so knowledgeable either. What will, like, for instance, Kingman Island, what will be different about it if we get a handle on this invasive species, and what kind of, maybe from a science standpoint, what are some of the different life things, the natural things we'll see if we get a handle on
Well,
this?
Kingman Island is a good example because it's not a natural island. It's dredge material. There was originally an island there, but it's mostly been created. So you have the soils that I was talking about that are compacted, and there's really not a good organic soil base. It's really just mineral soils on the surface. There's never been a organic soil built up. There's the understory is almost completely bush honeysuckle for most of the part of Kingman Island that's owned by the DC government. South of Benning Road, it's DC government. north of Benning Road, it's National Park Service. It's the golf course, part of Langston Golf Course. And then Heritage Island is a little bit different because it's not as, it didn't get as much dredge material, and it has more organic soils, and it also gets tidal influence. The center of Heritage Island actually can be inundated in high tides. And that's the one we're going to focus on this year. And really, the goal for Heritage Island is to, really, my goal is to eradicate the bush honeysuckle, which will take a long time, but it's got 30 years of bush honeysuckle growing on it, maybe 40 or 60, when it's never been managed. So it's one of those ones where they're big, they're easy to cut down, it's easy to use integrated pest management. You cut them down and you paint the stump with an herbicide, so you're not spraying herbicides everywhere, but you kill that individual. Then you can even leave the cut pieces there, and it can act as habitat and cover for songbirds and things like that.
So imagine that it's gone, and you've eradicated that. What other animals or what other life might show up, or what?
Well, one of our goals is, and what Laura mentioned, is this native plant nursery. And really, when you do invasive plant management, it's a two-step process. You do the invasive plant removal, but then you really have to follow it up with restoration. And what we want to do is create the native plant nursery and start doing seed collection from local plant populations, and restore that site with locally sourced plant material, native plants, so that we're
pre-contact plants?
What's that?
Pre-contact plants?
Well, hopefully.
Not European?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean there's scientific questions about what came when and things like that, but you know, it's pretty easy to pick out 20 or 30 different plants. That's what was done. The wetland restorations around Kingman Island, that's what was done there. They planted, I think they only planted 12 species in some of those wetland restorations on the Anacostia River. There's now 140 plant species in those, those are all volunteers. They just came from down upstream. And that's our goal, is to remove the invasives or manage them to reduce them to a manageable level. And then the second process is restore with native plants. And you have to do that because you have to at least set the stage for plants to come in as volunteers, but you're planting your native plants initially in order to prevent the invasive plants from coming in again and retaking over. So if you manage Phragmites, as you reduce that area of Phragmites, that stand of Phragmites, you have to be adding things in behind it so that it's not just going to fill in the bare soil that was there. So.
What kind of wildlife shows up after you started reintroducing the more local?
All sorts, especially if you do something like if you restore especially like a meadow type habitat or these wetland habitats, taking away Phragmites, which is a monoculture, and 5 years later having replaced it with a native plant community, you're going to have a massive amount of insects. You're going to have a lot more bird diversity. You're going to have much higher lizard and snake diversity. All sorts of things will come in.
Cool.
And they know if they find the habitat, they'll go there. If they're somewhere nearby, they will go to good habitat. They will.
Wow.
Just to add to that, it's mostly a matter of restoring the natural heritage, the biodiversity, because really invasives also have benefits. Phragmites retains sediment and has similar ecosystem service as other plants, but really what we're trying to recover is the biological diversity. In a place, in an acre where you would have only Phragmites, before there were like 40 species of plants that benefited all the wildlife, birds, and others. So it's really a matter of restoring biodiversity, what we're doing here.
So diversity is more important than going back to some imagined beginning?
Well, that's questionable, because it's really hard to get there. It's really impossible to get back there. So, and that's a topic of another big discussion. What we're doing at least is to recover populations of some of the native species, but I think we cannot claim that we're trying to get back to the pre-colonial times, because it's just a long shot, I think. Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't sure. Maybe you could go, then you go, and then we'll go there.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was an acceptable balance between invasives and natives you could achieve rather than saying, oh, we're going to eradicate all invasives. I know you mentioned that briefly, but...
Go ahead.
What we're doing, one of the exercises we're doing in the CWMA is to prioritize, because there's a lot of invasive species and a lot of invasive plant cover in the ecosystems, but in some places it doesn't make sense to control them. For example, along the metro or the railroads, there's a bunch of tree of heaven, but that's not an area with a conservation value. We want to go after the invasives that are growing on the wetlands of the Anacostia, the woodlands of the Rock Creek, that nice quality habitat for wildlife.
And then you?
Are there natural patterns of migration for plants? In other words, do they travel based on environment, weather, where they start encroaching into other lands where they haven't been before?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are many factors there. Wind, water, even wildlife, which makes the problem more complicated. Even native birds disperse the seeds of bush honeysuckle and English ivy. So it's a lot of different factors. And like Damien was saying, all these seeds are being dispersed all over DC by water, animals, and wind, but they only grow at the right sites. And these degraded soils that Damien was talking about are good areas for them. Also, floodplain areas, where the soils are rich in nutrients, that's where you'll see a lot of invasive. The areas of DC where you won't see as many is upland forest, like Fort DuPont Park, where the soils are more acidic and the conditions are less suitable for most invasives.
Fort DuPont also has a lot less deer than Rock Creek Park.
Right.
So they haven't had those impacts. Deer are notorious for spreading invasive plants and browsing on native plants. So where you have deer, they're spreading invasives and they're preferentially browsing on native plants. So they don't know that they can eat English ivy. So they don't even see it as a food item. So they leave English ivy go and they nibble on all the oak seedlings that are growing up through the English ivy.
We have to get him to come to some of the trainings. And then you, and then Finn.
I'm okay.
Okay, then you, and then you, and then you. Go ahead.
Heather from Cooperative Conservancy. It's a good segue because the deer don't know the borders, basically. So I'm just wondering, what are the goals for reaching out to the Maryland suburbs, the Maryland jurisdictions, but especially Montgomery County? I mean, that's the majority of our watershed is in Montgomery County. So are there goals for bringing those jurisdictions online with this cooperative?
We haven't talked about expanding the actual boundaries of the cooperative weed management area yet, but we do keep in touch with the invasive plant managers in Montgomery County and in Prince George's County. Montgomery County doesn't really have as active a group like Anacostia Watershed Society, which does a lot of work on county land in Prince George's County, but they do have. They invented the Weed Warrior program in Montgomery County.
But
so
there's only Carol Bergman.
Yeah,
She's lost all of her employees.
Yeah,
so
but she gave a talk recently I guess it was back in February. She said that since she started the program, they've logged something like 55,000 work hours or something. So they've had a good impact on invasives.
Actually, Prince George's County doesn't have any weed barrier program. And there's another topic of conversation there because the population there is kind of more of a challenge, and we as an environmental group have been trying to include minorities, and it's easier said than done when it comes to outreach with these groups, and some of them would like to join these kinds of activities, but you've got to know how to reach to them. Yeah.
Well, Rock Creek Conservancy definitely wants to be a partner. So
Yeah.
Great. Yes. Go ahead.
A couple of English ivy questions, related questions. There's a lot of tree planting going on in DC. Is there an attempt to really, from the beginning, try to deal with, to minimize English ivy encroachment? One question. And then also dealing with what's already existing. It's a big problem in Montgomery County and in people's homes, and here probably also. But the other one was, I didn't go, but there was a presentation about how to communicate about English ivy to homeowners that was in Virginia. Did you guys go
I didn't
or
go
know
through it
about
either,
it?
but
You knew
I have
about
the
it.
literature from it, and
Oh, good,
I think
okay.
we need to license it from them and use it here in the district. Yeah, English ivy is bad in the district. It's one of the worst invasive plants, and it's really bad. It grows as a ground cover, and it grows up trees. Usually, a lot of the new trees that are being planted, especially street trees, it's not going to be much of a problem because when they plant a new tree in the street trees, Joey can probably speak to this better, but they're not going to be planting it in a place where there's already English ivy growing, and they're typically putting in new soil.
And it doesn't come from if it's in somebody's yard. It doesn't. Just
It can move, but if you're in a tree box and there's no English ivy in the tree box, then it's probably not going to be moving into there unless it gets established by seed. One good thing about English ivy is it doesn't really grow really fast, so it's easy to get once you have it established. And it's actually relatively hard to establish even by planting it. You can still buy English ivy at a nursery. It's hard to establish by planting it. It usually spreads much better vegetatively. And it can be really bad growing up trees. I've pulled off vines that are this big, an English ivy vine off of a tree, Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens.
We've been working on it at Fort DuPont Park, but again, it's just a matter of where is it. For example, at Fort DuPont, we did this exercise, this invasive plant management plan to kind of guide our work in the park. But we found out that English ivy was kind of out of control. It was like more than 4 acres. So in that case, what we will do is to focus on species where the populations are more incipient, and Japanese steelgrass was a good example there at that park. There is just a small scattered populations, and if we leave it alone, it's going to become, you've probably been to the Seneca Creek State Park in Gaithersburg. That's a good example of how bad the Japanese steelgrass can get. So again, not only for English ivy, but other species, it depends on where is it and its abundance at the site, and we make the management decisions from there.
I have just a quick aside. I worked with our local Ace Hardware in Tacoma Park, which is where I live, and they stopped selling English ivy. Of course, he got English ivy and he sent it to another Ace, but at least, but that's okay. You're not going to change all Ace Hardware overnight, but working with the community, because he realized the community wouldn't be interested. So that sounds like if you get working in DC, getting communities interested, you might be able to stop something like that.
That's one of the things we want to do with the legislation, just to tackle the trade, because in DC we don't have really nurseries, it's only retailers, so it's going to be easier than what we did in Maryland, which is now a law. So that's one of our goals. Yeah.
It's a law now for the nurseries, or?
Yeah, it's to control the trade of invasive species.
Oh.
It's still kind of working because they established a committee, and then they're coming up with a protocol and then a tier list. So they are working on that at this time. So yeah.
And you, and then Stella, and then you.
Hi, I'm Julie Myers, and I became a weed warrior in 2006. And then, I'm really glad, for starters, just let me say, I'm really glad to see this cooperative reed management area. I would not have known about it, though, until I happened to see something. I graduated with the first class of the Watershed Stewards Association, the National Capital Region, and they've been good at sending out notices of things that are happening. I also became a stream team leader with Rock Creek Conservancy. I have had to really aggressively seek out information because there's no one clearinghouse. I understand that the organizations I work with have a capacity issue, and they don't have the capacity very often to have regular contact, any contact with volunteers. I mean, I had to hound NPS in 2006 to be able to go out into a local area to eradicate the English ivy. So I just heard about this last week. And that's sort of my experience. It's such a patchwork quilt of what's going on and who does what and what can I do and when can I do it. And I've been permitted from National Park Service to lead groups in the area that I manage, and I do. But it would be really great to have, you talked about a listserv, never heard of it before. You know, I don't have this information. I'm sure if I worked for one of your organizations, I would have it, but I don't. And it would be great to have one place where I could go to get this information and where the information's also pushed out to me. Right now, I have a couple of organizations that will send me information, but I don't always get it. I don't know when I'm getting it. You know, I don't have one place to go to. So you talked about Invasive Day. I lead groups all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I'd want to. I never heard of it before.
So this is kind of like one of the first public announcements of DC Invasive Day, which is our public meeting. But with the listserv, so there's information on the back of the of our brochures on how to join the listserv. And it hasn't been as active because we're having our public meeting today. So moving forward, starting in July, we plan to be a lot more active with the listserv. We'll be having an Invasive of the Month article, which will be written by one of our steering committee members. We'll be having some early detection, rapid response information going out about new and emerging invasives. So by all means, please, information that you know and everyone that's here and represented, if you have events, invasive related, trainings, please forward that information my way because I'd like to get it out to everyone. So we'll be working a lot more aggressively in our outreach, and this is one of our major
and to have the
beginning
clearinghouse, to have one place where I could go to,
and that's what we're hoping to be, which is the meaning of our cooperative, is trying to bring all of our major stakeholders together and serve as that clearinghouse for information and resources.
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, I'm really glad you're here, and congratulations on this kickoff, and I hope you get the money flowing in so you can do all those things that she's talking about. My question is about a balancing of goals, and I'm curious what your thoughts are about managing invasives versus the stormwater goals of the city, because I've seen places in Dunbar, Knox Park, for example, where English ivy is acting as the invasive that is threatening the trees, that are supporting the slopes, which are holding back the stormwater, and I've seen English ivy that's literally holding up the slope with its roots, preventing stormwater from rushing down to Rock Creek. And so I'm curious, kind of, what are your thoughts, and maybe it's just the beginning of this conversation, like how do we think about within an ecosystem? You know, sometimes maybe we want the invasives there because otherwise the rain's going to rush down, other times it's a huge part of the problem.
That's a great question, and that's something that has been kind of overlooked by the invasive plant control community, and definitely that requires some other restoration and soil control erosion measures, whether it's like wattle or biomass. There's a number of methods you could use after their removal, and that's something that we would like to talk more about in the CWMA, the soil conservation factor. Yeah.
We were just talking about this the other day, so Anna might be able to speak more on that too.
I think it all comes back to having a plan and having a priority with really well thought follow-up plan of restoration. I don't think it would be a good idea to just go to an area and kill everything and never go back. Otherwise, we'll just not even work on the area. If we have a plan for a certain section, then we can go ahead. For instance, speaking specifically about Dumbarton Oaks or other area that is really infested, I think saving trees will be one of our first priority. We would not have the capacity of killing the ground cover, but saving trees will be our first step, and we could build that upon that. I think that's what I can think and I can say about those specific areas where everything is just so abundant and there are other risks involved.
Dave? Yeah, I've been rooting out ivy for more than 20 years with native species groups that come up and die and come up again. But I live in Mount Pleasant and we've had a terrible battle about English ivy. People say, oh, it kills trees. Other people say, it doesn't overcrown the trees. It doesn't kill the tree. Don't cut down that ivy there because the neighbors will be very upset to have all the dead stuff hanging around for a year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can't do it over there because that's federal land. I don't worry about that myself. And people love ivy. It's evergreen. So ivy is a very delicate issue. You need the community, you need the local community to own that area. Otherwise, you know, your warriors come through and it's scorched earth and nothing else happens.
You know what else loves ivy? Norway rats love ivy.
Yeah, my neighbors.